the South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority, held today on Monday the 22nd of March 2021. Welcome everyone. Apologies for absence. Sorry.
Yes, morning members. I've got apologies from Councillor Ali, Jarvie and Harries. Councillor Elfrey's also messaged to say he's running late. So for members present, I have Councillors Shaw, White, Davies, Hussey, Norton, Colbrand, Brown, Smith, Spencer, Thomas, Bradwick, Holmes, Roberts, Evans, Jones and Drake. Have I missed anyone?
Anyone unaccountable for? Anyone over any other apologies? No. Thank you for that. Right, go to item 2, declaration of interest. Members of the Fire and Rescue Authority reminder of their personal responsibility to declare both orally and in writing any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in the agenda in accordance. Someone got background? In accordance, in respect of the matters contained in the agenda in accordance with provision of the Local Government Act 2000, the Fire and Rescue Authority standing orders and the members of Code of Conduct. Anyone got any declaration of interest? None? Thank you. You've had a roll call. Chairman's announcements. Related party transactions. All Fire Authority members will have received an email from Natalie Green asking for completion of the related party transaction forms to be returned by the end of the month at the latest. Please can all those who have not completed and returned the form, please do so in the next week. Anyone hasn't sent? I only just had it, but I couldn't get into it on the computer. I just had it sent to me. So I'm going to send it off by post today. Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for that. Can I say that, can they resend it to me because I cannot open it at all?
I couldn't either, so that's why I asked for it to be sent to me.
Can I ask, Chair, why can't they send a paper copy out to us on a second class? It'd be much easier. Some of us haven't got printers as well, so I'm just thinking out loud. I am. Thank you, Chair.
I would agree with that.
Chair, certainly we sent the electronic copies out for members to fill in electronically, but if members would prefer a paper copy, we were trying to keep our carbon footprint as low as possible. We can send those out if you would prefer.
I appreciate that, Sally, but when you can't open the electronic attachment from the iPad and you can't print it from your iPad, it's ridiculous. So just a comment, that's all.
Well, I had the same problem, Steve, so that's why I contacted Nat here. All right.
No trouble.
So, members, please, if you can't get into it, please ring up Sally or Nat here and ask her when to send you a form. All right.
And I'm quite prepared to pay my own postage back.
Oh, well, that's £10 for you a time.
Chairman, can you put me on the list, please?
Okay, all right, Val.
Thank you.
Volunteers for the vaccination centres. The service has been working with the health boards to provide volunteers for the vaccination centres to enable vaccination programs to proceed as quickly as possible. It is hoped that the first volunteering shift will commence shortly. I'm not sure if it has, Sally. To date, a number of shifts have been complete. Pardon?
It started last week. Our volunteers started at the vaccination centres last week.
All right. So I can say commenced last week. To date, a number of shifts have been completed by the staff from across the organisation to assist our health colleagues. Can we record our appreciation to all the staff involved with that? Yep. All agree?
Yep.
And I'll send a message thanking them on behalf. Sadie, if you can arrange for that, please.
Yes, certainly.
What's that one? IIP, is it, Sally?
Yes,
It is a great pleasure that I import. All right. It is with great pleasure that I inform you of the outstanding achievements we have received in receipt investigators in people's assessments. The service undertook the assessments in challenging time nationally and using the digital platform to reach out to all of our employees with great success. The assessment and informal group meetings were well received and contributed to the service receiving the gold in the People's Survey, an incredible achievement with silver in the health and well-being. This award being the first to be issued to any organisation in Wales. Following our last assessment in 2017, there has been significant progress and we were awarded a silver back then with a recommendation in the 2021 report. I know our officers are committed to ensuring the programme continues. I'd like to make reference to the assessors' commitments to how the service has responded during the COVID pandemic. The way in which the appliances available has been maintained, home working and use of technology, leadership and passion of all our staff to ensure the communities of South Wales remain safe, well protected. I know the members share this positive view and something that is, in all, the service should be very proud of. Again, can we record our great appreciation for all the staff involved? All agree? Fantastic. Right, just to ask you to send the best wishes because Joanne, that's Hugh's wife, have been in for operation. I think she may be out of hospital now, but Hugh can clarify that. Can we now extend from all our members our best wishes for a very quick recovery? It will be very awkward because she's had operation on the 2 knees. So all agree that we send that message and record it?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, members. Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll send on your kind regards to Joanne, who I can vouch for is being carefully looked after at home now. Thank you.
Oh.
Have you learned the boiled egg now since she's not there?
My learning around the domestic chores around the house, which I'm not very good at normally, is exponentially increasing in the last few days, I can assure you, Chair. All
right. Anyway, I and Sally and the chairs and vice chairs of the other 2 fire authorities met with the Deputy Minister last week, Anna Blythen. Sally, do you want to give an update on that, please? Which it wasn't a long meeting, it was only about half an hour.
No, really covered 3 key areas. First of all, the discussions that have been taking place on broadening the role of the firefighter, a detailed specification on what this might look at has now been agreed by the group looking at this area of work. That is now going to be shared with the Fire Brigades Union. The Deputy Minister had a meeting with them last week, and also with the other relevant trade unions, including the health trade unions. Welsh Government is trying to get a written statement out before the pre-election period starts later this week, but the Deputy Minister has indicated that the next steps to progress this issue of broadening the role won't now occur until after the May elections. Certainly the feedback that the Deputy Minister gave was that the Fire Brigades Union was sympathetic to the direction that Wales were travelling in, and hopefully the meeting that the Deputy Minister had with them last week was productive, and she promised to update us in due course. Also, each of the services gave an update on their work in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly the assistance to Welsh Ambulance Service, health boards and the vaccination centres. There was an update on the lateral flow testing of fire service staff, which commenced last week within South Wales at Joint Fire Control and is due to be widened out to other groups of staff over the coming weeks. And the final section was on the building safety white paper, where there was some discussion around the resource implications for each of the fire and rescue services. And members will note that they've got a paper on the white paper on the agenda today, so certainly some further information coming forward on that. Happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Sally. Any questions? Mind you, the Deputy Minister did say that she would let us keep us up to date on the meetings with FPU. So it's a bit early yet to ask, but I think give it a bit of time. If you don't come, I'll have to send a letter asking what the update is. Okay.
Chair, can I ask you
No
a question?
questions?
Chair, can I ask
Yes.
a question? Chair, through you, and please correct me if I'm wrong in asking this. Can the Chief confirm, as the new Chief Fire Officer been appointed for North Wales?
Yeah, thanks.
Well, you can ask the question, yes, under the Chairman's announcements.
Thanks, Chair.
Go on then, Hugh.
Yes. Yeah, my understanding, seeing the media press releases from North Wales following a competitive process, Dawn Docks, who was the previous Deputy Chief Fire Officer in North Wales that moved to Greater Manchester, she has been appointed as the new chief that will take over from Simon when he retires later this year. I believe that announcement was made at their Fire Authority meeting last Monday.
Thank you, Chair.
And that was confirmed at the meeting by Simon anyway, at our meeting with the Deputy Minister. Okay. So we look forward to seeing Dawn again. Right. Then we go to item 4, receive the minutes of the Fire Rescue Authority meeting held on the 8th of February 2021. That's page 5. Someone move as a...
I move, Chair.
As a true record.
I move.
That's seconded.
Second.
Right. Are we going to vote on this, Sally?
I'm happy that providing no member dissent,
any objection to it? All right. Any objections? No objections? Everyone agree? Okay, that's all right then. Then we go to H&R Equalities Committee held on the 2nd November 2020 on page 15.
I'll move those as true record.
I'll second that,
Right,
Second.
and you seconded.
Second.
Right, second by Councillor Roberts. Anyone disagree? All right, then we'll note that. Anyone at all? No, right, then we'll note it. Then we go to the FAPM committee meeting held on the 23rd of November 2020, page 23. Steve?
I propose them if you could.
That's seconded?
Second.
Seconded?
Second.
Right. Thank you. Anyone disagree? All agree we note the minute. All agree? Right, thank you. Then we go to item 5, update of actions on page 27. Sally?
Yeah, just one update from members this morning in relation to the acquisition of the new land at New Inn for the construction of a new fire station. We've agreed a 12-week exclusivity period with the owners of the site. So we're now underway with our site investigations and research pending finalisation of an offer.
And sorry, I'll have to declare an interest because I'm on a planning for to avoid.
Okay, that's recorded. Any other questions on the update of the actions? None? Thank you, Sally. Right, then we go to the reports for decision, and then we go to 6.1, the gender pay gap statement on page 31. Alison?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. Under the Equality Act, all public authorities must publish their gender pay gap information. This is a snapshot of the difference in pay between males and females, and the information must be published within a set time frame, and that's within the 12-month period upon which the snapshot is taken. Appendix 1 to the report presents the figures for the 31st of March 2020. You will see when compared to last year, so March of last year, the figures are improving. Appendix 1 is showing an improvement from 16.34% to 14.59% in terms of the mean or the average rate. And in terms of the median, which is the midpoint, the figures have reduced quite significantly from 20.92 down to 14.59%. In terms of why and how the figures are improving, you will see that the appendix also notes towards the bottom of the second page some of the activity that we've been undertaking in order to improve those figures. Some of that activity includes making sure we've got a mix of genders on interview and promotion panels. We are undertaking blind sifting in our recruitment procedures. We're currently working on our development pathways for all staff, but we know there's more to do. So this is very much work in progress for us as a service. And in terms of where we go next, we need to continue with that effort of looking through all our procedures so that we address the gender pay gap going forward. HR Equality has approved and reviewed this report in February. What we are asking you for is approval to proceed to publish the data as at the 31st of March 2020. So we need to publish this data by the 31st of March 2021. What you may be aware of is that government have recently allowed organisations an extension of time to publish. So we do have a window of opportunity, but we've progressed and developed our report ahead of that announcement being issued. So seeking your approval to publish the Gender Pay Gap report, which is at Appendix 1 of the report.
I would move.
Thank you, Alison. It's been moved. Is it seconded?
Yes, I'll second that, Chair.
Anyone got any questions on that report?
Only a comment, Chairman. I found this idea salary sacrifice payments. All right, I understand.
Okay. Right. Sally, we got to go for a vote on this one?
Yes, we need a vote on this one.
That's right.
Okay. Councillor Bradwick.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
Favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim's not on, nor is Councillor Ellsbury yet. Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins is not on. Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones has disappeared. Okay. Councillor Lister.
Just to give apologies from Councillor Ibrahim as well, he has texted me, but in favour.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Smith.
Support.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
And Councillor Williams isn't here. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. We go to item 6.2, South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority Annual Pay Policy Statement 2021 to 2022, page 35. Alison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So by way of context, the Localism Bill of 2010 set out the requirement for us to publish our pay policy statements each year. There is set criteria and information that we need to publish, and this detail is covered off in the report itself. The statement is forward-looking, so it covers the period 2021 to 22, and the statement is at Appendix 1 of the report. I haven't proposed any changes. The format remains the same as last year. The only updates that have been made to this report are the salary levels so they are now reflective of current rates. HR and Equalities reviewed this report at its February meeting and approved it. And once again, I'm seeking your approval of the statement so that it can be published by the 31st of March of this year.
Right, inaudible debate into... Oh, hang on a sec. I've lost it again.
You're still there, Chairman.
Am I?
Yeah.
Anyway, anyone got any questions?
No, I'd move the report, Chairman.
I
Is that
second.
seconded?
Yes,
Yeah, I'll
second.
second
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Is that seconded?
Yes, that's been seconded, Chair.
Any questions or any comments, please?
No, only it's the same as before.
Oh, lost it.
Chair, you're still here.
Oh, but I can't see anything at the moment. Steve, will you take over for a minute, please?
Yes, I can see it. I can go. Everybody's happy with that. Then, sorry, can we go for the vote then, Sally?
Yes. Councillor Bradwick?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Davies? Gone. Ooh. Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Jones? No. Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Lister?
In favour.
Councillor Norton?
In favour.
Councillor
All right, I'm
Roberts?
back now.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Smith?
In favour.
Councillor Spencer? Councillor Thomas?
In favour.
Councillor White?
In favour.
And Councillor Davies?
In favour.
That's unanimous,
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you very much. Right, then we go to 6.3, Treasury Management Strategy 2021-22 on page 65. Chris?
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is the usual format of Treasury Management Strategy report that you received.
Come on.
This is the first one for the year in terms of setting the Treasury Management indicators for the coming year, so 21-22. No major changes in policy, Chair, so there's nothing that I want to particularly draw members' attention to on that front. The format and the strategy and the policy around borrowing and investment remains pretty much the same. I just wanted to draw members' attention to a couple of the tables within the report, just in case members were kind of looking at them and wondering. On page 71, you'll note that there is a table around the capital expenditure requirements of the authority. Members will see that the 21-22 figure at the top of that table is around £8.6 million. That reflects the carryover and slippage from the current financial year. So that's the reason why that particular programme is quite high. It's not unusual for us to slip money forward in the capital programme. And what I'm going to go on to point out in the other tables largely reflects that position. On page 74 of the report, or the agenda, sorry, the borrowing figures are given 2/3 of the way down that table, and you'll see the borrowing requirement goes up to about £38 million by 23-24. Again, it reflects the kind of aspirational nature of some of those programme years. Typically what happens, obviously, if capital expenditure gets deferred or delayed or slips, then obviously the borrowing requirement will consequentially slip with it. So that's a kind of a worst case scenario, if I can put it like that, assuming we do actually complete all of the programmed works within those years. And the last one I just wanted to bring members' attention to is on page 75. You'll see there's a small table there which just outlines the percentage of the revenue budget which is actually used to meet the capital financing of the authority. And you'll see again those figures are sort of slowly creeping up from around 6 to about 7.5% over the next 3 years. Again, it's dependent on all of the programme being completed clearly and it all being financed from borrowing. In practice, of course, as we go through the programme, we often find other sources of financing as well. So if grant aid comes in and other things like that, then we can avoid borrowing, we can avoid financing costs and keep those numbers down. I have included a statement just under that table to indicate that we sort of set a ceiling of 10% of the budget highlighted for capital financing purposes. In practice, it's not unusual for authorities of our type, or indeed councils, to have borrowing requirements around about that 6, 7, 8% limit. So there's nothing unusual in those numbers. So I didn't want members getting concerned that there was an upward trend there. It is well within the sort of bounds of what we were expecting. And unless members have got specific questions, Chair, I wasn't going to raise any other matters. Like see Rod Shaw is indicating.
Rod?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, yeah, and thank you, Chris. I am indicating. And I think you've addressed one issue already on page 75, the affordability table there. It does say that a level of 10% is deemed unaffordable, but the trend is an ever-increasing rise in the balance, if you like. So we're up to on this table, up to 7.49%. In my mind, that's a very high figure, frankly. But it's more the trend I'm worried about, really, that year on year it's increasing. Can I ask the other question as well? It'll be very quick, yeah?
Yes.
On page 81, we talk about counterparty risk, and these can be substantial financially. Do we have a specific policy for counterparty risk?
Just to pick up then, following on from what I said on the earlier one, Rod, yes, it is an upward trend. It does reflect the programmes as set. We do obviously monitor this figure, not just through the Treasury management, but through the budget process as well. So as we're looking at the building up of the medium-term financial plan, we will look at the impact on that capital financing budget, on that budget as well overall. So we're kind of constantly aware of that. I suppose in terms of it being a high figure, it's not high in my mind. I say it's pretty normal in terms of the sort of numbers that you see within local authorities across the piece. So in that sense, it's not worrying. Clearly, the capital programme obviously covers off the replacement of a lot of our assets. So our vehicle replacement programmes, our IT and our buildings and so on. And in that sense, there is a need to actually keep refreshing those items. There are peaks and troughs within that, though. There are years where we have to replace a lot of vehicles, and therefore sort of capital financing costs tend to creep up a bit. And then obviously as we pay off debt, they will consequently come down. So there are sort of peaks and troughs within that, and it can reflect sort of where we are on those peaks and troughs. But to reassure you, part of the purpose of this report is to actually ensure that we do monitor, that we are setting these limits in accordance with a sort of fully transparent process, and members can ask those questions, and if we decide that they are too high, we'll address them through the budget process for the coming years. At this moment in time, there's no need to sort of have grave concerns about it, but yes, it does need monitoring, I agree. In terms of the counterparty risks, the counterparty risks clearly are sort of aimed at the investment side of the business. And when I say investments, I don't mean stocks and shares and things like that. We don't do that. What they are essentially is just placing of cash on a temporary basis, so that we can earn some interest on them, relatively low interest. And the criticality, and I say this in many Treasury management presentations, what we look at first and foremost in our Treasury management policy on investments is the security of the investment. So before we look at how much interest we can get, before we look at when we can get it back, the critical issue is security. So we only will go with counterparties or we're pretty absolutely sure are going to give us the money back when we request it back. And that essentially relates to the main banks and those which are underwritten by kind of governments. So there's sort of no concept of investing in dodgy places.
All right, Chris.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Anyone else got any questions for Chris?
Councillor Norton's indicating.
Thank you, Sally.
Right. Dan.
As you obviously said, just now around investments, and obviously going through a report, obviously the investments at the moment are quite low because of obviously the interest rates. I just want to have your feedback on borrowing. As obviously borrowing rates are fairly cheap at the moment, is it worth obviously looking at obviously as persistent to invest or save now? Well, obviously when the interest rates you get on savings are low, could be potentially more cost effective to look obviously at borrowing more to do borrow to save when possible. Now when obviously it's more affordable to borrow, and then obviously change that when obviously the Bank of England does eventually increase the rates.
Absolutely, Councillor Norton. That's exactly what we do with our Treasury management advisors on a regular basis. So at the moment, the policy, obviously, because interest rates are very low, it's better that we use the cash to actually avoid borrowing, because that's the most financially advantageous thing to do. But yes, we constantly monitor the sort of longer term interest rates to ensure that if there starts to be an upward trend in those rates, we will actually start to borrow. But I stress it's a very gradual process. We don't want to dive in and sort of commit to large amounts of borrowing at a point in time. There is an affordability issue about ensuring that our loans that we do take out fall out over a sort of regular pattern as well. So we're not caught renewing all our borrowing at a particular time. We have actually, or the plan is that we were going to do some borrowing around about this and next financial year, but only to a limited degree. When we're talking sort of £5 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but in terms of the overall kind of portfolio, it's a relatively small borrowing requirement. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on. We constantly monitor that position, and because interest rates are low, there will be a point at which it's more effective to actually start the borrowing process.
All right, Dan? Dan, all right?
Yeah, but thank you for the answer.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions of Chris?
Can I please ask a question, Chairman?
Yes, Val.
Yeah, we've got 4 million that's sitting in the banks and doing nothing. It's earning nothing for us. I assume that's sort of for an emergency. If you want it, you can get it quick. But did raise in my mind the question, what do the banks do with that money that they give us no interest on? Do they make money on it, Chris?
Banks always make money, Val. That's why they exist. We do retain an element of investment return on our bank accounts, even when the money is sat there, but it's very small. But to be honest, placing it with third-party counterparties doesn't generate much more anyway. The main reason for keeping the cash there at any point in time is purely cash flow. So when we need to pay payrolls, when we need to pay our suppliers and so on, there is obviously a need to have ready access to cash. So it'll depend on a day-to-day basis how much cash is actually held in our main bank accounts.
Oh, wait. Flip.
All right, Val. Anyone else? Don't give them an easy time.
No one else is indicating.
Right. So I move we note and approve. Is that seconded?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone against that report? None? All right,
Chair,
Sally?
I'll need to take a vote on that, yes. Councillor
I'm a bit
Bradwick?
confused. I'm a bit confused about that because it says note and approve. So I don't. Go on then.
Yes, in favour.
Yeah, it's to approve the various indicators and things. So, Councillor Bradwick.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
In favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ellsbury.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jones.
In favour.
Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Holmes.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
Support.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is unanimous. Thank you. Then we go to item 6.4, 2015 pension reform, HMT consultation outcomes, an update on legal challenge, and that's on page 93. Alison?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report provides members with an update following Cloud Sergeant judgment, which followed a successful legal challenge from the Fire Brigade Union on behalf of its members on the ground of discrimination. The update, the report focuses on two aspects. The first is the outcome of the UK government's consultation on public service pension schemes, and the second is the outcome of an employment appeal tribunal which considered the position of fire and rescue authorities in implementing the legislation that was later found to be discriminatory. The update on the consultation, you'll see in the report, paragraph 2.3 sets out the link to the outcome of the consultation. The consultation concluded that the deferred choice underpin was the direction of travel and the agreed policy approach. What this means is that members will make a choice before they draw their benefits. So they'll have the choice of the best scheme options for them at retirement. The second aspect, which is probably more interesting and of note to the Fire Authority, is that the outcome of the Employment Appeal Tribunal, which recently reported, this was in relation to clarifying the position as regards whether the FRAs have the legal powers to implement government legislation relating to the transactional or transitional protections. The Employment Appeal Tribunal considered an appeal in December, which was based around the fact that FRAs did not make the legislation that was later found by the court to be discriminatory. The tribunal determined that FRAs can act outside legislation in order to avoid discrimination, and that's one of the key points here. Since that outcome was reported more recently in the last few months, the UK Government Steering Group has considered whether or not to appeal that decision, and the outcome is that they will not be appealing the decision. So FRAs now need to take next steps in order to implement the judgment. We understand that Treasury, so HMT and HMRC, are working together on a suite of guidance on approaches including how we resolve taxation issues, and as well as a raft of other procedural aspects. We will now work with our Scheme Advisory Board and Local Pensions Board on matters of implementation. So that's by way of an update on both aspects. So the first was the Treasury consultation outcomes, and the second was the outcome of the Employment Appeal Tribunal on the decision of legal powers for FRAs and whether we can act outside legislation in order to avoid discrimination. The report asks that members acknowledge the publication of the consultation and also the outcome of the Employment Appeal Tribunal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone got any questions?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Steve, do you want to? Well, go on, Val.
Oh, right. Thank you. Sorry. Under the financial considerations, amazingly, it's 22 is the concluding date, isn't it, Alison? That's when the everything becomes finalised, that we move into this new situation. Have we got any? That's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Any indication as to any indication as to how many cases you might actually be dealing with in 2022? I suddenly realised 22 was upon us next year. But how many cases? Because there's going to be a lot of work for you.
Yes, so we've got so the cases that need immediate action are those that are described as being an immediate detriment, and those will include people who are due to retire and those who have already retired and will need addressing. We think that we've got a few hundred of those, and then looking forward, any member who has transitioned into the new scheme, so that's the 2015 scheme, so that's sort of 2022 and beyond, those members who retire will have then the option of choosing the best scheme that works for them from a financial perspective. There will be several hundred of those, but what we will now need to do is work with our pensions administrators in terms of lining up the pensions admin support, so that at the point of retirement, those people who are looking at their options will be presented with two different retirement statements, if that makes sense. But yeah,
it's a massive workload.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
That's all I wanted to say,
Anyone
Chair.
else? Steve, do you want to come in?
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say, Chair. It's been a mammoth task. It's been horrendous for officers and everybody. But I think we need a paper now back to the local pensions board meeting so we can discuss this in depth at the earliest convenience for everybody. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve.
Chair,
anyone else got any questions?
Councillors Brown and then Councillor Shaw indicating.
Louise.
Oh yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the question the Employment Appeal Tribunal is sort of the very first level of the sort of tribunal and court system, and I just wondered why the steering committee, in view of what's just been said about the level of work that it involves, didn't decide to appeal the decision and go to the Court of Appeal, because often employment tribunal decisions are appealed, and I wondered what the reasoning behind not doing so was. Thank you.
Alison, shall I pick this one up?
Yes, please.
This was appealed through, but it was remitted back to the Employment Appeal Tribunal to do the final decision on the points of law. There's been detailed consideration by the steering committee as to whether a further appeal should be lodged through to the Court of Appeal, but there were three different grounds that it would have to succeed on, and the chances of success on one of the grounds was very limited. So having considered various QC's advice, the decision was taken not to appeal any further than had already been appealed.
Oh, I see. So it went back already to them. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then, Louise, right. Rod?
Very briefly, Chair, thank you. Yes, I think Sally's actually answered the question, but just a comment. I find it extraordinary the Employment Appeal Panel could say that it could not that the rescue service could not rely on a Schedule 22 defence. It seems it's almost contradictory, in law. But we are where we are, and Sally's already answered it. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rod. Anyone else got any questions to Alison or to Sally? So someone move the report, please.
Yeah, Chair. I moved the recommendations, Chair.
Yeah, I'll second.
Right. Is that seconded?
Second.
Right. Sally?
Okay. Councillor Bradwick?
Yeah, in favour.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand?
In favour.
Colbrand, yeah. Councillor Davies?
Yes.
Councillor...
So, someone got background?
I think someone's got a television or radio on in the background.
Please turn your mics off unless you were going to answer Sally on the vote.
Councillor Drake.
Thank you.
In favour.
Councillor Ellsbury.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins is not on. Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jones.
In favour.
Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
Yeah, in favour.
Councillor Holmes.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer. Councillor Spencer.
Agree.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Councillor Williams, I'm not sure if you were in for the whole of that debate or not.
Yeah, I joined. Yes, I'm in favour.
Thank you. That was unanimous,
Okay,
Chair.
Unanimous. Could I ask members to turn their mics off unless they have asked to speak? Thank you. We go to the next item, which is 6.5. Local Government Elections, Wales Act 2021, page 97. Sally?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure this is fairly similar to reports that you're receiving through your home authorities. Just to give a bit of an overview of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act that's come into force, but particularly to the provisions that are relevant for the Fire and Rescue Authority. Probably the key provisions relate to the administration around Fire and Rescue Authority and committee meetings. So page 98 deals with some of the key points. One aspect that will be coming into force from the 1st of May so that it runs concurrently after the current coronavirus provisions lapse for remote attendance at meetings, enables Fire Authority members to have a choice as to whether they attend in person, COVID regulations permitting, or virtually attend a meeting of the Fire and Rescue Authority and its committees. What is required at the moment is that all members can hear each other and be heard. At the moment, there is no provision on the Fire and Rescue Authority for members to be able to see each other. Members will note that the broadcast provisions don't apply to us yet, but there is provision for Welsh Government to bring those in due course. And another key change around the administration surrounding meetings that comes into force from the 1st of May again is that meeting agendas and copies of reports have to be published electronically now instead of in hard copy format to tie in with Welsh Government's drive to digitising more areas of work and reducing the carbon footprint across Wales. Obviously, we're working as an organisation on trying to get some of these changes through, particularly around our IT for remote meetings. We're trying to ensure that any provision that we make going forward enables us to be able to broadcast meetings and hopefully have electronic voting for those members that remotely attend in due course. In relation to performance and reporting, the Act does make provision for the Fire and Rescue Authority to no longer be an improvement authority under the Welsh measure, but that isn't coming into force immediately, unlike the local authorities and national park organisations. So that, we have been advised by Welsh Government, won't come into force until there's a new performance regime developed, and that won't be worked upon until after the Welsh Government elections, because they want to renew the national framework for fire before deciding on what the performance regime will be. But certainly we're pushing to try and start that work, particularly on some of the core areas of service delivery that aren't going to change under the relevant legislation. The final area when members made some fairly robust comments to both the Scrutiny Committee at Welsh Government and in their consultation response relates to the holding of a public inquiry if there are any changes to the combination order, unless the Fire and Rescue Authority agrees. The amendments that have been finally enacted, and they came into force immediately upon the Act coming into being in January, are very marginally different to the provisions that were in the consultation document, which says that now an inquiry only has to be held if the order would be varied to change the combined area or the combination order was being revoked. In any other situation, it says that Welsh Government may cause an inquiry to be held if it were to be varied in a different way. But what we haven't got is any information on how Welsh Government will exercise that discretion or in what circumstances. There is also a final area that, even though it was cited under the legislation as applying to local authorities, it does actually apply to fire authorities, which is the requirement for the Fire Authority Standards Committee to prepare an annual report to the Fire Authority on the discharge of their work. And that will kick in with the first report being required to be prepared in 2022. Happy to take any questions on that. And I think, Chair, I can see Councillor Steve Evans, followed by Steve Bradwick.
Right.
Steve? I've got 2 questions, Chair. The first is, they're on about remote meetings, but the broadband is not up to speed yet concerning most of the members because people are cutting in and out. So remote meetings are quite difficult at times on many platforms. And the second thing is, with the substantial amount of agenda to reduce the paperwork, it's very difficult to open the agendas electronically on some of the formats. So how are we going to look into dealing with that?
Yeah, first of all, on the broadband side, obviously it won't necessarily be from your home. If you choose to dial in remotely to a meeting, you don't have to do that from your home. You might do it from council offices where you happen to be working, or another site. Or, of course, you have the option to travel in and physically attend the meeting. So they're leaving that flexibility there. In relation to the agenda size, yes, I accept, particularly when you're attending a remote meeting, it's quite difficult unless you've got 2 screens. And certainly that's something we'll be looking at with our IT colleagues to see if there's a way of enabling you to digitally open the papers and then use your own device to log into the meeting. So maybe the provision of 2 devices, 1 tablet and one screen to remotely log into meetings.
All right, Steve.
Easy sell, but it's not.
Steve Bradwick.
Yeah, that was my question, Chair, regarding the papers. You know, I'm sitting here on my iPad now. I cannot access my reports because I'm on the iPad. I got the paper. So, you know, the significant investment would have to be put in from the authority to provide us with extra facilities to do this. You know, is Welsh Government going to pay for that? You know, have they thought about that idea? Because at the end of the day, you know, where should the cost come out of our pockets? The Welsh Government are implementing it.
I mean, certainly the legislation doesn't prohibit paper copies, but it does say that they have to be submitted to members in electronic form. And I know certainly with a couple of the councils, we are going to have more discussions because there's a limit on the size of attachments that some councils will receive as well. So that's all work in progress at the moment. I think I can also see Councillor White and Councillor Norton.
Sally. I just want to think, because I do struggle with Starleaf, to be honest with you. I do struggle with Starleaf. Any news on Teams, where we are with Teams at the moment? An introduction of Teams?
Certainly, when members approved at the last Fire Authority meeting the ICT strategy for the organisation going forward, So that's now work in progress, and the ICT colleagues are looking at how we can incorporate all these provisions for members from the 1st of May going forward. I don't know whether Rich has got any further update on the teams.
Yeah, thanks, Sal. Just to say, yeah, we've completed the procurement exercise now. So for the teams, we've also engaged a company called Red Cortex, who will be our delivery partner. So I've got a meeting towards the end of this week now to kickstart the change. One of the things you might have identified with your iPads is how the minutes or the papers are saved, in what format. So this is something I'll take back now the rest of the week to see if we can actually save them and send them out in a format which is iPad friendly. Which might make things easier.
All right, Richard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think Councillor Norton had indicated, Chair.
John?
Yeah, I welcome the report, and I do welcome moving to hybrid meetings. Obviously, there will be teething issues like any new system, but I think we've adapted well to online working this year. I think it will actually lead to benefits, because obviously I remember when we had in-person meetings, a lot of members would attend late or leave early because they would have to go to meetings in their own home authorities, and travel time does take up a significant amount when obviously people are travelling from far distances to get to Land Trisant, once a month or once every couple of months. So I think it will save significant time for members, and it will obviously make that more members are able to attend meetings. There's obviously potentially issues if we go into committee structure changes. So I think it is a benefit, and I personally have no issues with the online equipment, but obviously that just might be myself.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else?
I think Councillor Brown's indicating, and I think Rich wants to come back in as well.
Louise?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, certainly support the idea of moving to Teams, because at the moment Starleaf is on the iPad, and it's not possible to electronically put your hand up or to vote, which you can do in Teams meetings, and so there is a limitation. And I mean, I had a problem with my iPad battery, so I've had to buy a new iPad. I mean, obviously I use it for personal use as well, but part of the reason why I needed to spend nearly £600 in a new iPad was because of meetings like this. So there are sort of implications of not being able to use Teams on your own council laptop. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Who else?
I think Richard wants to come back in.
Richard.
Yeah, just really to say how well I think yourselves and all our staff have coped with the quite big change to online meetings more. I think it's easier it's easy to identify some of the challenges we have, but we haven't failed to hold a meeting, we haven't failed to carry out our business. So it's all positive and it's all moving in the right direction. So I think some of the feedback, like Councillor Bradwick around paper, I think it's important we listen to that feedback, because sometimes people will want paper reports to work with on in conjunction with meeting online. So I think all the feedback we get, we're trying to take it and move it as quickly forward as we can. So thanks to members, really.
I think the point from the chair and vice chairs, if you don't have the actual papers, it's hard to chair the meeting to start with, right?
Yeah.
And I do this on council as well. I have a copy, my vice chairman has it, and I think we're not used to sitting for long meetings, members, not like officers, how they sit all day, I don't know, in front of, you know what I mean, at the end of the day. And, to look at the screen all the time, it just gets tiring if it's a long meeting for members. There's no question about that. They're not used to that culture, the same as officers.
Yeah.
We're more human, from that point of view. Anyone else want to make any more comments?
Yeah.
Dan, you want to come back in? Dan?
Yeah, and Councillor Glyn Holmes as well.
Right. Well, mine was just to echo what Richard said. I think we should have put on the record to publicly thank officers for work they've done to adapt to obviously a very new situation where last year for online work, and obviously it's been very difficult. They had to do it in quite a short period of time. So I just want to publicly thank officers for that.
Thank you, Dan. Who else is it? Sorry.
Councillor Holmes.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, fine. As far as I'm concerned, I'm with you and Steve Bradwick 100%. Speaking to a screen, bear in mind that I'm a dinosaur when it comes to IT. It's far better to be in a meeting, and I'm looking forward when we can all get around the table. Because you have to admit that sometimes the sound does not come over very good, and I'm a little bit of hard of hearing, so I don't always pick it up. But you could count me in paper copies and then get back to normal around the table. But there again, I've got to declare interest. I can get down to HQ on a skateboard, so it's just around the road for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. So you're super fit then, Glenn, are you?
Can I just come in there?
Still get about. Thank you.
Can I come in there?
Who else?
Yeah.
Steve?
Just to say, I sit on another authority and they're having the same sort of issues with IT equipment, agendas and everything else. And they are looking to provide equipment for every member. So, like Steve said initially, if it's going to come down to that, it may have to be a cost, which is everybody's got the same equipment, the same agendas, the same everything in the format. So everybody's got the same, response. It's just a thought. That's what others are doing at the moment,
Yeah, but if we want to improve system, then there is a cost, and I think in the end of the day we need a system where every member is comfortable and be able to contribute, listen to, see whatever it is. And we have struggled with the current system. It's improved, don't get me wrong, it has improved, and we have got backup officers who do a good job for us if we've got a problem. But I got to go, if I have a problem, I got to go to my council officers to sort it out. You know what I mean? Because we're on the council system. And I don't know many members have got different systems. I'd like to know what the different systems are, Sally. You know what I mean? There must be a lot of different systems. Personal ones.
I think there are, and certainly the ideal solution would be one Welsh public sector system, so that you could all have one device that would cover all the areas of different public sector work that you do. But I suspect that might be too much of an ambition for the current time.
But Sonny, anywhere else I have meetings, and who will confirm if it's with the Welsh Government, if it's with G10, if it's with the WLJA, it's a perfect system. There's no hiccups, no problems. I think it reflects back on our system at the end of the day.
And certainly that's why Rich brought the report at the last meeting to update the ICT strategy and have the move towards Teams. So, as Rich indicated, that should be coming forward shortly.
Well done, Rich.
I'm trying my best, Chair.
Well, you be a Teams player.
There's no award for that, mind you. We still got to work hard, don't worry. Right, can we, Sally? Then we need to note this and vote on it or not?
Yes, because I'm asking for delegated authority to make the necessary changes to our constitutional documents.
Move. Seconded. Seconded. Right, Sally.
Okay, Councillor Bradwick.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Davies.
In favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Aylesbury.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jones.
In favour.
Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
Yeah, in favour.
Councillor Holmes.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Councillor Williams.
In favour.
Thank you.
Chair.
Right, we go to the next item, 6.7, Audit Wales Annual Audit Summary 2019-20. on page 139, and we have a guest speaker today,
Chair,
which is Mr.
Chair, sorry. Page 103, proposed new terms of reference for scrutiny committee.
Oh, sorry, my apology. Yes, I was trying to go around it a bit.
Page
Right,
103.
Sally.
Okay. I'll be fairly brief on this one. I appreciate it's an extremely lengthy report. As members will be aware, at the AGM, the chair asked the Finance Audit Scrutiny Committee to go away and look at options to reform Fire and Rescue Authority scrutiny. At Appendix 1, I've attached the report that the Scrutiny Committee considered and the various options. And the Scrutiny Committee opted to pursue option 4, which was Fire and Rescue Authority members and co-opting specialist members as required. And as a consequence of that, they considered proposed changes to the terms of reference and the baseline criteria of how the committee would be formed and function at their January meeting. As a consequence of those changes, to ensure that there were sufficient members on each of the remaining committees, it was considered necessary to reduce the number of members on the HR and Equalities Committee back down to 10. For those members who have been with the authority for an awfully long time, they'll recall that originally there was 10 members on those committees, and then to have 7 members on the Scrutiny Committee. The result of that is detailed in Appendix 4. HR Committee and Finance Audit Committee considered these proposals at their most recent meeting, and the Finance meeting actually took place last week, where the Finance Committee asked me to also include another option for members to consider of merging the Finance Audit and HR and Equalities Committee and having 10 members on that committee, so forming in effect a new Resources Committee, to be able to increase the membership of the Scrutiny Committee, as they felt 7 members was slightly low and there may be issues with quorum. So I've quickly done some proposals on that, and they are attached at Appendix 5 for members' consideration. I'm mindful in the forward work programme this matter was due to come back before the authority at this meeting so that members could take a decision on scrutiny reform prior to the AGM. But you'll notice that I've actually now included 2 alternate recommendations, and certainly I think out of preference, given the fact that Finance Audit Committee came up with an alternate recommendation at their meeting last week, and members of the Scrutiny Committee and the HR and Equalities Committee and indeed the Finance Audit Committee haven't had an opportunity to consider what this would look like in detail as yet. My recommendation today would be that members actually don't take a decision on this unless you wish to do so, but actually to refer the matter back so that it can be considered by each of those committees and then come back to the authority in the new municipal year once there's been some detailed consideration. And it may also be at that point that we have a clearer indication as to where the national framework is going and how that might impact on any scrutiny changes going forward. But happy to be guided by members and to answer any questions, Chair.
Right, any questions, please?
Councillor Brown is indicating.
Louise,
Yeah.
right, come on.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the proposal for it to go back to the committees would be a good idea, because it was only proposed last week, and the HR committee, which effectively will disappear, and also the scrutiny committee haven't had chance to fully consider it. And I think it would be better if there was a a debate there. I would suggest another option actually is also whether or not the current arrangements actually provide for better scrutiny than the proposal put forward, because I did, in my opinion, I did think the original proposal did provide a better scrutiny. And in terms of numbers on the committee, I mean, there's only a very small number on the pensions board, and that still operates. And effectively, it would mean that there are about, I'm not sure whether it's 24 or 25 members of the authority, and only 10 of them will be have any decision-making powers. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just clarify, the HR committee wouldn't be done away with. There would be, in effect, on this particular option that Finance recommended, there would, in effect, be a new resources committee that would have jurisdiction to consider both financial and audit issues and HR issues. So there'd have to be a carefully crafted work programme so that the meetings were split, part finance, part HR, to consider the necessary report.
Louise? Louise,
Sorry,
want to come back in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. I think it is actually a merger of the committee, so it does mean that there's going to be one committee rather than two. And, obviously HR committee haven't had chance to debate that. So I think, and also the scrutiny committee hasn't had chance to debate it. So I don't, and it's only came in last week. So I think it would be better, as Sally suggested, for it to be further debated at these individual committees. I mean, in terms of scrutiny, if you're comparing it to local government, there are sort of cabinet and executive, but there are also, decision making more across the board by committees, which is a different sort of structure that some local authorities can have. And the more committees there are, the more spread the decision making is. But obviously, I do feel just that it's to consider this now would be a little bit rushed. Thank you.
Are you prepared to move three?
Chair, sorry, I've got Councillor Norton and Councillor Bradwick indicating.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I know obviously we've discussed this for about a year now, and I'm on a few different committees, so it has come back and forth. But I do appreciate, obviously, with the new proposals, it needs to be discussed further. My main concerns with actually both the original plan and the main proposals are they both have weaknesses. So if you were going to have a committee of 7 and keep the HR and Quality Committee and Finance Committee without merging them, I think you overstretch members and there's going to be issues with attendance, even if you have options to attend online. And I think if you merge the committees, I think you would have an issue with balance. So obviously, Finance Committee isn't balanced. We do it one per authority, obviously because financial assistance should have each authority's impact and decision making at that level. This way, if you only have one resources committee, you would lose group balance if you were going to keep that. And I think you would also have an issue potentially overworking some members, because you would have obviously a lot of workload potentially on that committee, being one resources committee with just 10 members. So if attendance wasn't high for that committee, I think you would have an issue with some members having too much work on their plate. I would personally, and this has kind of been shot down before, but I personally would like, with you, are looking at potentially having a scrutiny, keeping the HR and Equalities Committee and Finance Committee separate, going for a scrutiny committee of maybe 7 members, but then you have 3 permanent members you co-opt on. So you would have a committee of 10, but with 3 co-opted members, which would have independence and would have expertise. That way you would still resolve the obviously membership issue, because you would have a membership of 10 totally, and you would improve independence and expertise of the committee. I know there would be a cost to that, but if you would only have 3 independent members, the cost would be quite limited as well.
I mean, the point I'm trying to make to you as the chairman, you either accept this and refer back to the relevant committees, and they're just going to be discussed in full, and that's it. That's what we decided today. Who's the next speaker, Sally?
Councillor Bradwick.
Yes, Chair. I'd like to say a previous speaker said that the pension board was small. It's not small. With 10 members, with 5 members, and we got 5 members of the unions, and the unions have got the same rights as us members. So we had 10 committee members of the local pensions board. So we're not a small committee. I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anyone else now?
And can I pick up on the comment that about the membership? The membership only works if all the members turn up. If people are not sitting on any of them committees, it put added pressure on the other members to make up the shortfalls. So that's why this new system is more beneficial to all the members of the authorities rather than the one that was preferred initially.
Right. Anyone else now? Because at the end of the day, this is, you know, it's all according to whether you agree, whether you refer back to the committees or not. Is someone moving that or not, the recommendation?
I move, Chair, that we refer this back to the relevant committees, Chair.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Yeah.
Any amendment to that? Right then. Sally, we go for a vote.
Okay. Councillor Bradwick.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
In favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ellsbury.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jones.
In favour.
Councillor Lister.
I believe
Lister, he's gone.
Councillor Lister's left the meeting. There's something wrong with his laptop. I did put it in.
Okay. Councillor Norton.
I support it.
Councillor Holmes.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Smith.
Support.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Councillor Williams.
In favour.
That was unanimous.
Thank you,
Chair.
members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll go to item 6.7. Audit Wales Annual Audit Summary 2019 and 20 on page 139. And I said we got a speaker from the Audit Wales, which is Mr. Nick Selwyn. Sally, do you want to start off the discussion, please?
Yeah, this is Audit Wales Annual Audit Summary. It's in a slightly different format, which Nick will take you through than previous versions, but it summarises the positive outcomes that the authorities had in relation to financial audits, performance and improvement audits, and the Wellbeing and Future Generations audit that's taken place. But I'll leave Nick just to summarise that for you.
Okay. Thank you,
Welcome,
Sally.
Nick. Welcome, Nick. We are informal, so if you don't mind, we call ourselves not councillors or misters. All right, Nick?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll just run through the report very quickly. As Sally said, this is the annual audit summary. It has changed this year. We used to produce an annual improvement report. The intention is very much just to summarise and capture the key conclusions from a programme of audit work that we've completed within any 12-month period. So the report itself is split into 3 sections. On pages 141 to 142, you'll find some contextual information on the work of South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority. Then there's a section that looks at the local audit work, and that's set out on pages 143 to 144. And as Sally said, that covers 3 main areas. Work that we've undertaken in respect of the audit of the accounts, work that we've undertaken in respect of how the authority is meeting the requirements of the local government measure, and then the final bit looks at work that the authority is delivering its responsibilities under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Overall, we found no major issues of concern in terms of our audit programme, and overall we've given a very positive conclusion in terms of what we've undertaken. Then the final part of the report, which is set out on pages 144 to 145, just identifies national work that the Auditor General undertakes annually that may be of interest and relevance to members of the Fire and Rescue Authority. And on this section, we've listed 4 reports, 2 relating to the work of public service boards, a report looking at lessons for the Senedd in development and adoption of new legislation, then a final report looking at commercialisation in local government, which is very much focused on issues to consider if you're going to pursue a commercial strategy in that particular area, but we feel that would be of relevance and interest to members of the authority. There are hyperlinks to the reports included, and they just summarise our overall key conclusion. So that's a very brief run through the report itself, Chair. Happy to take any comments or questions from members.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for the report, and appreciate the positive aspects of it, which has been going on for a number of years, and we hope that will continue anyway. Any member got any questions to Nick? Nothing at all? Will someone move that we note the report?
I move that, Chair. Yeah, I second
seconded?
That, I second that, Chair, yeah.
Right. So no one against that? Thank you. And I got it. Right, then we go. Thank you, Nick, for that. Much obliged to you. Right, you go to 6.8. Report of Strategic Plan 2020 on page 147. Sally.
Yes, thanks, Chair. This is just a summary for members' information and approval for the publication of our strategic plan. You'll recall that you've recently considered the consultation that was undertaken in relation to our strategic themes and priority actions. So the team has been working to put those into our ongoing strategic plan. So the key area is Appendix 1 on page 151 and 152, which takes members through our 8 strategic objectives and 8 strategic themes and our key high-level objectives for each of those themes over the coming year. So happy to take any questions? Chair, I think you're on mute. Chair, we still can't hear you. Try now, Chair.
All right.
That's better.
Right. Any questions of Sally? If not, someone moving note the report.
Move it, Chair.
Chair, we're asking for approval to publish the plan as well.
Yes, I just note that, and then we go to that one. All agree we note it. Right. Sally, take us through on the vote then.
Okay. Councillor Bradwick?
In favour.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand? Councillor Colbrand? I'll come back to him. Councillor Davies?
Yes.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ellsbury?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Jones? Councillor Jones? Gone. Councillor Norton?
Support.
Councillor Roberts?
Favour.
Councillor Shaw?
In favour.
Councillor Smith?
Support.
Councillor Spencer? Councillor Spencer? I'll come back to him. Councillor Thomas?
In favour.
Councillor White?
In favour.
Councillor Williams?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand?
Yes, sorry, in favour. I couldn't get my microphone to unmute. Sorry about that.
Thank you. And Councillor Spencer? No. Okay. That was unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Spencer is putting his thumb up. Yes, he can't speak, Sally. So,
thank you.
Thank you, members. Right, we go next to 6.9, One Gwent Wide Public Service Board, page 153. Hugh?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, morning, members. Trustees, morning. Members will be familiar with how we as a service have embraced the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act now since it came into being since April 2016. Being one of the 4 statutory partners, we've had 9 public service boards that we've needed to attend throughout the last five years. The reason why it's 9 and not 10 is because right from the outset, Rhondda Taff and Merthyr agreed to merge their PSBs into a single PSB, so that's how we've ended up with 9. In the background and running in parallel with the PSBs, we've had a Gwent-wide or former Gwent-wide geographical leaders group called the G10, where myself and the Chair attend. I think it would be fair to say, Chair, and hopefully you agree, that the relationships have developed are very professional throughout the G10 partners, and the time now feels right to move to a Gwent-wide PSB. That would significantly reduce the burden, particularly on myself and the Chair, with the number of PSB meetings that we would attend. PSBs can meet and do tend to meet anything from 6 weeks to quarterly. So when you aggregate all of those meetings up across the year, across the 9 PSBs, it's a significant amount of my time, particularly, and other officers' time that is taken up around the public service boards as we work in partnership. In the report later on in the agenda, identifies to members the work of the PSBs, and whilst each PSB has different wellbeing objectives and different numbers, they all broadly centre on people, place, economy and the environment. They might be called different things in different places, but they generally centre on those 4 principles around making that place a better environment for people to work and spend their money, etc. So the proposal in front of members to agree today, hopefully, is the direction of travel with partners to move to a Gwent-wide PSB from the 1st of September. My personal view, I think, certainly having worked across the collaborative footprint of Rhondda Taff and Merthyr, it is something that can work and work very well. And I think if we learn in the lessons from COVID, and certainly if we look at the wellbeing plans, the health and poverty inequality that we've had across our communities and continue to have across our communities, I think working on a geographical footprint, particularly on a health board boundary, I think it gives us a bigger bang for our buck. It makes us more efficient, it makes us more effective, and really gets to the wicked issues that we have across our communities. And I think sometimes drilling down into smaller areas, very specific on a local authority geographical area, I think move into a wider footprint allows us to tackle these more strategic issues. Yes, we will need to work, what does the local partnership footprint look like? But I think it's a really brave, ambitious and bold move to a Gwent-wide PSB, and happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Hugh. Anyone got any questions? By the way, that reduces from 5 down to 1, and that makes a big difference.
Will there be a cost saving overall? That's what I wanted to put in. Yeah.
I think perhaps not in cold hard cash, Steve, but in efficient economic use of people's time and getting to the nub of the problem. I think they'll give us our collective will and our collective might. There is Welsh Government funding, I think, identified within the paper. Yes, there's funding that is currently available, which then could go into a Gwent-wide PSB instead of it being chunked up into individual piecemeal and probably being proportionally smaller. When you aggregate that up, I think we get bigger bang for our buck from a financial perspective and from a collective leadership perspective as well.
My only concern was that you weren't going to lose out financially if you merged all together. That was my concern. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else?
Councillor Brown's indicating, and Councillor Bradwick, I think.
Louise?
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered what would the PSBs of the individual authorities still carry on, and would they be almost like a subcommittee, or would there be just one public service board? What are the views of the individual public service boards in the different authorities? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. The individual PSBs would be disbanded, but each PSB would need to go through the mechanism to disband the PSB and agree to work on a collaborative footprint. So that would need to go through the different governance models of the 5 PSBs. They've all been engaged in the discussions, and these discussions have been going on for a considerable period of time. So it's not been done in isolation at G10 from the PSB. So there is a collective will amongst the 5 PSBs and their partners to move to a Gwent-wide PSB. However, we will, and we do recognise that there needs to be structures and opportunities to work locally as well to deal with local issues. And those networks and structures are currently being reviewed by the Gwent-wide strategic working group.
Yeah, I think, could I come back, Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously, you've explained the reason why a Gwent-wide public services board would be better, but it was just really whether or not there's sort of like subcommittees from the different areas to feed in to particular issues which may arise in individual authorities, but obviously may have some common ground across other authorities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Louise. I mean, the 5 authorities are on board with this as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Steve, you wanted to come in, Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is a good thing. At the end of the day, it's saving officers' time and everybody's time, really. Because at the end of the day, Hugh and yourself go to all these different other meetings, where one meeting would be better for everybody. And when it's all together, I think it'd be much better for everybody. Just want to say I fully support this move. Okay.
Anyone else wants to speak on this?
If I may,
Yes, Val.
sorry, I don't know how to indicate they want to speak. I think it's a good proposal. Similarity with the work that the various PSBs have been trying to do, the officer time, yeah, it's good. It'll also raise an awareness, I think, with councillors, with the members of the boards, the different characteristics and the issues within the different areas that it would cover. So, yeah, it's a good proposal, and certainly from the Fire Authority's view, it's got to be a better option. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
No one's indicating, Chair.
Can someone move that we accept the proposal?
I move, Chair.
Is that seconded?
Yeah, seconded, yeah.
Sally?
Okay, Councillor Bradwick?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand? Councillor
In favour.
Colbrand?
Yeah, in favour.
Councillor Davies?
In favour.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ellsbury?
In favour.
Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Jones has just left. Councillor Norton?
Yeah, I support it.
Councillor Roberts?
Support.
Councillor Shaw?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Smith?
Sorry, support.
Councillor Spencer? Councillor Spencer's in favour. He's putting the thumbs up. Councillor Thomas?
In favour.
Councillor White?
In favour.
Councillor Williams?
In favour.
Thank you,
That's
members.
unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Then we go to item 610, Granville Tower Inquiry. The next review report, page 157. Hugh?
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks to introduce to members a recently published review and assessment by the Welsh Government Fire Advisor, Mr Dan Stevens, into the 3 fire and rescue services response to the tragic Grenfell Towers incident and the inquiry recommendations from the Phase 1. Members will be aware that Phase 1 focused on the London Fire Brigade response to the tragic events of that evening, which we're coming up to nearly 4 years away. Members will be pleased to note that during the Fire Advisor's report, he references that we as a service did not wait for the recommendations of this report or the Grenfell Tower public inquiry. And the fact as a service we were very proactive. We set up a high-rise working group immediately and done a full stock review of the premises that we had, and members have previously received reports on the buildings that we have identified across South Wales that had failed cladding and failed compartmentation on them. Many of those buildings have now been remedied, although we do know that there are some buildings that are still need work on them as well. I think it's heartening to see in paragraph 2.6 the fire advisor's conclusions drawn by the Deputy Minister, and certainly within the Deputy Minister's statement, which is attached in the appendices as well, around the likelihood of such catastrophic outcomes of an incident has substantially reduced across Wales because of the proactive work that we've done. And some of that proactive work has come as an example, really, is that as a service we've taken the opportunity to use the extensive high-rise training facilities as the West Midlands Fire and Rescue Service, probably one of only not many services that have invested in that. So thank you to members for your continued support in that. When you go through the report, there are lessons for us to learn, there are gaps for us to fill. Some of them are national, and there's making sure that we carry out due diligence and audit within our continued processes, that we fill those gaps as well locally. You will see at the end of the report is very service specific, of which most of them we are in full compliance with, other than maybe the CAD plans, which I know have advanced at speed as well. But there are two issues which are being taken up nationally and outside of our ability to influence or change. So in conversations with the fire advisor through the National Fire Chiefs Council, we seek in those conversations to go on. I'm recommending that members acknowledge the fire advisor's report that he's made available to the Deputy Minister. We will review this report through our own internal structures of the Operational Coordination Group and our high-rise task group. And then I'll ask Richie, as the chair of the OCG, to bring back a report to members on the gap analysis and the timelines and what we're doing to benchmark against the report that the fire advisor has made available. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Could I ask you on the issue of putting the onus on the management of these responsible for lifts, for example? Have we had any cases where our firefighters couldn't have access because of the fact they weren't maintained and they weren't working?
I'd have to go back through each and every occurrence, really.
No, I don't want to go that generally. I mean,
generally, the building maintenance and the fire management of the buildings that we attend and audit and review and do our operational assessment on, they're pretty good. But we do know from a building regulations perspective that we've got failed buildings. So buildings have been built that don't comply with existing legislation. There is a paper following this on the safer buildings in Wales and the consultation on a change in legislation. But we can only deal with what we've got today, and I think that's one of the risks that we continue to face as a service, the extensive built environment that we've got across South Wales. But in general terms, Chair, the fire management of the buildings that we do attend is pretty good. Where it's not, we will take action. And we will take enforcement action, and members are kept up to date where we are with them as well.
Do you think the owners and managers, which is recommendation here, will submit to the fire authorities a monthly reports on maintenance and the conditions of lifts?
Yeah, I think therein lies some of the complexity, really, in the fact of receiving those reports, and alike it can be quite or would be quite burdensome. We're quite well situated, really, within South Wales. We've got mobile data terminals, for want of a better word, laptops on the front of all of our fire appliances, which are currently going through an upgrade process. We make the best availability of the operational information intelligence that we've got. So we've got an operational intelligence program. So our operational crews, when they arrive at a building, a complex building, will have access to plans, position of lifts, inlets for water supplies, etc. as well. So it is always a challenge keeping our database up to date to ensure that our operational crews get the best operational intelligence.
it's not a matter of us up to date. It's making sure that the managers and owners are up to date on a monthly report. This is what the indications are, or recommendation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else got any questions for Hugh on the report?
Yeah,
All right,
Councillor Steve Evans and then Councillor Glyn Holmes.
Yeah, no, thanks for the report. Just to ask, I know we've always been proactive and the service is tremendous in an approach anything. But what I didn't appreciate in paragraph 2.3 is a negativity during the review regarding our service. Could you answer on that, Hugh, if possible?
So, Steve, what paragraph are you referring to? 2.3 in the report?
Yeah, on page 158, is it?
Yeah. They're the national issues, Steve. Sorry, they're not the local issues. They're the national issues that relate to the.
I just thought would that affect us, because that it gives us a lot of negativity before.
Yeah, it's accepted.
Proactive.
Yeah, it's accepted by the fire advisor. That is outside of our gift to change or control. It's a national issue. It's a very technological issue that when fire control receive a phone call from someone in the building, that people on the instant ground should have immediate and direct access to that caller. That is a very technological challenge to do. So it is a national issue, which is when you look at the back of the fire advisor's report, it shows us as partial compliance, because we can provide fire survival guidance from our control room, but being able to do that and share it with the instant ground at live time is extremely challenging, and is probably vexing us nationally, to be honest with you.
I just thought it made us look a bit negative in our approach, which I know we're not. But just the way the wording had come across, it didn't look very negative for us, you know.
Okay, Glenn.
Thank you, Chairman. Hugh mentioned that he's been in the fire service have been in some buildings, and they blatantly have not complied with building regulations. As far as I'm concerned, that's a serious matter. Just imagine if the firefighters with Grenfell had got into the building, they would have been part of the statistics, fatalities. We don't want to go back to the time of the Woolworths disaster back in the early 1970s, where fire service personnel were put into the building and a fire got behind them, and tragically some of the firefighters got killed. It's important that if there are observations regarding non-compliance with building regulations, they should be brought to the forefront as soon as possible. I'm also aware that it's not always possible for building control personnel to check everything in a building if they're not on site 24 hours of the day. I hope that the draft safety bill, when it becomes legislation, will take into account of the situation. It looks as if it does. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah,
Neil?
thanks, Councillor Hope. Yeah, thanks for that. Firefighter safety is of paramount importance to us. If we can't keep our firefighters safe, we can't keep the public safe. Where we have found failings in the built environment, we are very proactive in working with the local authority, the responsible person, building owner. But all of that stuff is very complex. Hence, the next paper around trying to move to a picture of better safety or building safety reform and legislation, as opposed to probably where we currently are with the fire safety order, which is very much a self-policed regulation as well, which was a step change when we went to the FSO following the move from as you will be aware, with the previous fire precautions legislation, which was brought in the early 70s on the back of the Woolworths disaster as well.
I thought the Woolworths before you were time, Lou.
Hey, he's not that old. Anyone else got any questions for Hugh? Well, can I move the recommendations 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3? Is that seconded?
Yes,
yeah, second. I can do that, Chair.
Sally?
Councillor Bradwick?
Yes, I support.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Davies?
In favour.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ellsbury's messaged he's got technical issues. Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Jones has also messaged. He's got technical issues. Councillor Lister has gone. Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Holmes.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Smith.
Support.
Councillor Spencer. Councillor Spencer, in favour. Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White. Councillor White has gone. Councillor Williams.
In favour.
That was
Thank
unanimous,
you.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Then go to item 611, Safer Buildings in Wales, the Welsh Government consultation on page 165. Welcome, Dewey.
Chair, good morning, members. I'm going to give you a brief of the paper between pages 165, 169. There's a accompanying appendix. The white paper is on a separate appendix, and our intended response is on page 173 to 200. Really, to update members on the Welsh Government white paper that sets out proposals for comprehensive reform legislation that contributes to the building safety and fire and our fire and rescue authorities' response. As Hugh outlined in the previous paper, the tragic events of Grenfell has stimulated changes to the systems of building control. That's to the type of materials used, how the buildings are constructed, and then how they're managed through the whole life of the building. And Welsh Government set out a position statement last 2020. And this white paper, the white paper you have as an appendix, takes that further to clarify the approach the Welsh Government are intending under a single building safety regime. They will set a new regime for all of Wales, and there are significant changes that it will mean for the fire authority and our business fire safety team. It intends to cover all occupied residential buildings, so that goes far further than current legislation. They intend to have two categories of buildings, and that relates to their height and use. So the category 1 will be buildings over 18 metres or more than 6 stories and containing 2 or more dwellings. And category 2, which have a greater impact on us, these will be residential properties with 2 or more dwellings that are no more than 18 metres. So in essence, we could be inspecting houses with one single door that's been converted to 2 flats, or any house of multiple occupation. So this is a significant change for our business fire safety team and from where we currently have a reason to inspect. Looking at the scope and the buildings, as I said, it says about the 2 categories, but it also will have our involvement in more of the gateways. So they're not just from the not just now from after use, but throughout the construction and the build of the building, the whole life of the building, there is potential for us to be involved. The impacts for us, it will require further sort of resources so we can upskill our inspecting officers. Welsh Government have said in the previous paper that there may be 2 equivalent fire safety full-time equivalent posts in the whole of Wales for certain recommendations they made previously. However, this white paper goes beyond that, and at our estimates, we believe they have underestimated for the whole of Wales what additional requirements that will mean. We believe that it is going to have a significant impact to us. It's very hard to quantify what it'll mean in resources, but I think they have underestimated 2 additional posts in Wales. We believe there is going to be a number of additional posts required within this service to deal with the changes, or we'll have to significantly align our resources to accommodate it. I think the key fact is that we will now be going to if this is introduced, we'll be going to many more premises beyond the front door that we wouldn't have been inspected, and it will be greater work for our business fire safety team. As I said, the paper is in a separate appendices, and our intended or your intended response that's been drafted by our head of business fire safety, Owen Jane, who is next to me in the room, is on pages 173 to 200. The recommendations for yourselves are contained there, that you approve the consultation response and acknowledge the likely impacts for the service, in that it will create additional resource impacts to us that we are unable to fully quantify at this time. Owen is here to answer any questions you may have, Chair.
Thank you, Dewey. Much obliged, and it's a very comprehensive response. I can see that. Any member got any questions for Dewey?
Chair, can I divert the question? Yeah.
The only question I'm going to ask is going to be a bigger financial burden for us if we need to take over that legislation?
Owen?
Ultimately it's going to have financial implications because it's going to increase the scope of buildings we inspect. It's going to increase our involvement right throughout the design phase, construction phase, and then beyond. The impact the proposals make are far-reaching, so your accountable persons, your design, your contractors, all going to have to come through the fire services in this gateway approach. So ultimately, it's going to have financial impact on the Fire and Rescue Authority and the service.
Chair, if I could just add on that one, that was Councillor Evans. That was one of the bits I mentioned under the Chair's announcement with the meeting with the Deputy Minister, that all three services had really emphasised the additional resource requirements that were going to be required under the proposed bill as it stands.
Chair, could I come in just to answer Councillor? Just to add to it, really. Within the paper and within the consultation response, Welsh Government, I believe they've in their assessment, as I've said, I think they've underestimated what it will be. At this point, we can't categorically say to the authority it's going to be this amount of money or this amount of resources until we actually see the paper in full. Yeah.
Okay then, Rod.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have to say it's a significant paper and a significant response, so thank you, Owen. In the paper itself, I was quite surprised to see that bungalows are a higher risk than flats, purpose-built flats. So I can understand the direction of travel and the need, if you like, for fire safety in something less than 18-metre buildings. It makes a lot of sense. I agree with Steve's question that there's going to be a resourcing issue, but it could well be that because you're now looking at a much bigger portfolio of property, there'll be an enhanced need for resources in the early stage that may well diminish once the initial assessment's done. Is that a fair comment?
When you look at the proposals, you have the fire safety order, and then this would run alongside it. So it's going to increase our risk-based inspection program. That we don't carry out inspections currently on this type of building. When you look at the new legislation that's coming into the building safety regime, we don't know what that looks like yet. So it's going to have an immediate training and competency impact, and then. Probably as we get more experienced, yes, the development and the competency bit won't be a problem. But it's still, when you look at the buildings, I think it was somewhere between 13,000 and 37,000 extra buildings that will come into scope, and we're going to have to, pretty much do as we do now, and it's going to be a risk-based inspection program. So we'll go to what we perceive as the highest risk buildings at that time.
Yeah. Overall, it should reduce fire risk, shouldn't it? But it increases a resource requirement, certainly at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. Overall, we thoroughly agree with the Welsh Government proposals. It's just how we resource it and the impact on many things. We discussed earlier on IT and collecting our data, how it's shared. our involvement through the gateway process. If we put a hard stop on, we could be drawn into appeals process. So, it's going to increase our involvement right throughout the life cycle of a building.
Oh, I agree, and it should be reflected in consultations with Welsh Government, shouldn't it? Thank you.
Right, anyone else got any questions for...
Chair, you've got Councillor Norton and then Councillor Holmes.
Right. Dan?
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I just want to have a question. On page 167, it highlights there's between 1,300 and 3,700 houses, buildings in Category 2. Obviously, it's slightly concerning. Obviously, we don't know the phone number. I understand why. But is there any plans to work with the 10 local authorities to obviously find out the actual number? Because obviously we're not able to carry out the duties if they do change, unless we actually know how many buildings, amount of work and scale will have to be undertaken.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We work alongside our building controls. We work alongside Welsh Government, and we did from the outset of following Grenfell, where we shared information we had on buildings, and we had buildings on our list that Welsh Government didn't have, and vice versa. So we've learned from that, and we try and align our databases now on more buildings. The reason the unknown is we've never really looked at houses converted to flats. So it's an unknown number at the moment. It's between 13 and 37,000, as you rightly said. But that's across Wales, and some work will have to be done when they decide on which option they're going to follow in sharing that data. So, accurate data is going to be key to this.
Right, Glenn?
Thank you, Chairman. From my humble opinion, the officers are spot on, Chairman. This is going to be a drain on present resources. These resources will have to be increased, and there's going to be a financial cost. There's no doubt about it. And I think the sooner we get looking at this, the sooner the better. The other thing which I find somewhat insulting in the Safer Buildings in Wales consultation is where if a local authority cannot check plans for something or carry out work in their own area. What I can see is, say, for example, an application is going into Cardiff City would not be allowed to check those plans. It would have to be another Welsh authority. I think that's an insult on the professionalism of a particular local authority.
Thank you, Glenn. Any comments, Owen? Or
no, I think it's just a check and balances when we've had some work from approved inspectors and building inspectors in the past. The Dame Hackett review said that it was a broken system and greater scrutiny needed to be put in place. So I think it's just a fallout of that, to be honest.
Okay. Anyone else now?
Chair, I think Councillor Holmes wants to come back in.
Ian, you want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What was mentioned by the officer about approved inspectors. I worked in a local authority for 40-odd years. As I made it quite known, I did declare an interest right at the beginning of joining the fire service committee here, that I'm in the approved inspector regime. I think a lot of questions could be asked. I won't mention any names, but I think the officer has got a valid point. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Glenn. Thank you for that. Anyone else now?
May I, Chair?
Right. Val?
Congratulations on all the work the officers have put into this report, and also for sending these reports entirely to us. Thank you. If you look at number 87, section 9, number 87, you might like to reword. Somebody's done a good lot of homework. I think the from should be deleted, and on our response, the doing so, not doing do. But no, thank you very much for all the effort that's gone in, Chairman.
Thank you, Val. We all endorse that. Anyone else? Right. I'll move recommendations 5.1 and 5.2. Is that seconded?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Second.
Sally?
Yep. Councillor Bradwick?
In favour.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Davies?
favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ellsbury's not managed to get back on. Councillor Evans.
In favour. And Councillor Jones has a technical problem. So.
Yeah. Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer. Yeah, Councillor Spencer supports. Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White is back
In favour.
on. Yep. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, in favour.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. Right, reports for information. 7.1, page 203. Annual report on the Finance and Audit Performance Management Committee. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This report sets out the annual report of the committee and its scrutiny group during the municipal year. The committee was established to demonstrate the authority's commitment to efficient and effective deployment of public resources and the attainment of related performance targets. It's responsible for the planning and management of the authority's financial resources, overseeing the financial reporting process, and provides a detailed examination of financial performance. It also provides assurance for the adequacy of the risk management framework and associated control environment, assisting the Fire and Rescue Authority in policy and strategy development issues, including those relating to finance, audit, performance management and good governance issues. The report is set out in several areas. Firstly, looking at the financial responsibilities, which covers revenue and capital monitoring, where the committee has considered in detail regular monitoring reports on revenue and capital budgets. Regarding expenditure during COVID-19, members requested a briefing detailing where funds were being spent during the pandemic, and officers advised members that all COVID-related response and recovery expenditure was being tracked by the service and figures were regularly being provided to the Welsh Government. Members received updated and subjective breakdowns of COVID-19 financial impacts, and the service continues to submit claims for the additional COVID-19 expenditure to Welsh Government on a monthly basis. The committee also considered the revenue and capital outturn and budget setting, as well as the reserve strategy, and reviewed the statement of accounts. In March, the FAPA meeting also considered the completion of accounts and reviewed the audit of accounts report addendum issued by Audit Wales, and have also reviewed the Treasury management and medium-term financial strategy as well. Moving on to policy, audit and development. With regards to internal audit, the committee was required to review and approve the internal audit programme and reviews and monitors actions taken by departments as a result of the findings and recommendations. And the committee agreed to the annual internal audit programme 2021. And following that, the committee considered in detail the progress and findings of those relevant audits, which can be seen on page 207. Considering external audit, the committee is responsible for overseeing the authority's relations with the external auditor, and the committee also reviewed and monitored the actions taken by departments as a result of the external auditor's findings and recommendations in a number of detailed reports that the committee has reviewed. Moving then to performance management, the committee received all external reports on performance of the authority, and in addition to spent considerable time considering progress against the statutory performance indicators and service reports, to the Welsh Government. The committee also reviewed the health check and performance against the priority actions to achieve the 8 strategic themes in the 10-year strategic plan. FACM has also received reports and scrutinised reports on the Business Fire Safety Annual Summary Report for 1920 and received an Emergency Services Network update. Looking at the scrutiny arrangements for the committee, where it's responsible for the scrutiny function of the authority and has undertaken a considerable amount of scrutiny throughout the year on various topics. Appendix 1 to this paper details the work of the scrutiny group, which has reviewed the financial management and asset management responsibilities, appointed member champions, reviewed initial scrutiny committee reform proposals, scrutinised the departmental risk registers, and also received the initial draft of the annual governance statement, as well as an updated future trend report, which members found very interesting. Further scrutiny committee, further areas of work that have been undertaken. The FACM committee also looked at a second round of further scrutiny for the committee reform proposals, reviewed the register of gifts and hospitality, and also received and confirmed the response to the Welsh Audit Office inquiry to those charged with governance. That's a whistle-stop tour of the annual report, members, and if there are any questions, I will of course field them, but the recommendation is that members note the work undertaken by the Finance, Audit and Performance Management Committee and Scrutiny Group during the municipal year.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. Much obliged. Anyone got any questions?
It's just been a busy committee, as you can appreciate.
Right, are you good?
Yeah.
Right, are you going to move the recommendations?
Yeah, I'm going to propose a recommendation.
To note?
Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah.
Is that seconded?
Yes.
Is that seconded?
Councillor
Someone
Bell-Smith seconded.
Sorry?
Councillor Bell-Smith, I think, seconded, Chair.
Yeah, I was happy to second.
Right. Okay. Right, that's a note. Anyone not happy with that?
No, it's good.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for that. Much obliged to you. On to item 7.2, annual report of the work of the HR Equalities Committee. Page 219, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So the annex to this report sets out the papers that have been discussed at HR Equalities. We commenced the year looking at our service people plan, and arising out of that, focused very much on a range of HR and people-related issues. These include reviewing our occupational health activity. Pension circulars are shared with the HR Equality Committee for consideration and oversight. We looked at our attendance management, so absences across service, particularly through a COVID lens. Our recruitment and attraction strategy focused high up on the agenda, at the way that we recruit and some of the steps we took in terms of our outreach activity. Our leadership development strategy, we started the journey of preparing our pathways for all staff, sharing our initial thinking there. Mental health is focused high on our agenda this year, and we've undertaken a project to look at our ongoing mental health support, as well as our wellbeing strategy more generally. And as members are aware, we commenced our job evaluation work towards the beginning of last year. That was paused at the front end of COVID, but we picked that back up as part of our sort of return to normality. We are very much now working on job evaluation to bring that back to a fire authority discussion, and that extraordinary meeting we're looking to schedule in probably at some time during April or May. We reviewed papers ahead of their submission to Fire Authority, including the annual pay policy statement, the gender pay gap statement, and the new procedure on our car lease scheme for the service. We reviewed our establishment levels, particularly from an HR directorate perspective, following the new structure that was implemented just ahead of my joining in 2019. And we've done some work on our preparations for the launch of the socio-economic duty, which comes into force on the 31st of this month. So probably quite a busy year for HR and equalities from a people perspective. We also had papers around our technical and operational training, and these were around the Real Fire Training facility down in Cardiff Gate, our work on apprenticeships, and there was a paper brought on our activity in relation to high rise more recently. So a full year of people and training focus, I'd say.
All right, Alison. And a big learning curve for you as well, Alison.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyone got any questions on this report?
Chair, I would like to thank everybody involved in this for the work they've undertaken in all aspects of HR. Well done, everybody. It's been a big project.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else? Pam, will you move we note?
Yes, I'll move the we note.
That's seconded.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any objections to that? Thank you. Thank you, Alison. And thank all the staff for their work, obviously.
Thank you.
Then we go on to 7.3, summary of the local pension board work programme, page 229. Alison, back again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So a quick run through of the activity of the local pension board. It's fair to say where we started at the beginning of the year was around how are we going to ensure our members have the necessary skills and knowledge in order to undertake their role on the pension board. So we undertook a training needs analysis, which provided us with a view of the levels of skills and knowledge across the board. That then sort of crafted our upskill programme. So what we now have is an agenda that's split in two parts. The first part is business, and the second part is then around upskill. We reviewed our service level agreement with our pension provider in this year, and we also looked at our terms of reference, which we tweaked and updated. We have now got a senior member of our pensions administrator on our board, which is actually proving really, really helpful in terms of bringing that extra added knowledge and expertise to the board. And we've, I think, probably in the last year, have created that sense of looking at some of the difficult issues around pensions, upskilling our members, and just reviewing and keeping alive that look at how we're functioning as a board. I think probably that's as much as I would say in terms of the knowledge and skills. One of the big pieces of work that we did was we looked at and created a members handbook, and that handbook has every aspect of running the local pension board in it, from links to the fire pension schemes through to members' roles and responsibilities, and I think that's probably been quite useful. But I'll pause there and just ask probably our chair, Steve, if there's anything else to add.
Steve?
I got nothing to add, Chair, just like to note it. And yes, thanks to Alison for the excellent work that she provides for us. Gives us outstanding. We had a really good team. Thank you ever so much, Alison. And it's nice to see that the the provider who looks after our pensions is now coming to our meetings so we can question all on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else got any comments? Well, Steve moved up in noted. Is that seconded?
Yes.
Don't
Second.
be shy. Is that seconded?
The second, Chairman, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Val. Anyone against that? Thank you. Then we go to item 7.4, work with the public service boards, page 235. Sally?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mindful of time, so I won't go through each service board area in turn, as you'll all be aware of your own home authorities, public service board plans, but the appendices to the report cover each of the 9 service boards that we're a statutory member of, outlines the main points of the plan, as you'll recognise, as Hugh mentioned on the report on the formation of the single Gwent Public Service Board. A lot of the objectives are very, very similar to each other, just slightly different terminology. And each of the appendices then details how the Fire and Rescue Authority feed in to those specific areas of the Public Service Board work programmes. And hopefully this time next year, when we're reporting these back to you, we'll have a more streamlined report, as Gwent will be one public service board.
With relief. Anyone got any questions? If not, someone move we note.
Streamline the paperwork.
Yes. Someone move we note.
I'll move that, Chair, then. Yes.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Right, thank you. Anyone against that? Thank you very much. Thank you, Sally. Then we come to item 7.5, summary of the National Issues Committee, update 2019-21 on page 259. Hugh?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like Sal, extremely mindful of time. So the paper's there to reassure members that collaboration is still at the heart of how we work across South Wales and everything that we do. You will see right from operational perspective, procurement of breathing apparatus set. We're just about to launch a media launch as well on the rollout of new personal protective equipment for our firefighters. So the very best PPE that we can afford them is being afforded to them. Replacement of fire helmets. Corporate wear is something we're looking at and will feature in the budget hopefully for 2022 on an all Wales basis. We've got all Wales fleet, national resilience, and all the way through to our first aid and trauma training as well, and media and comms. So whilst the statutory, or not a non-statutory, the formal board of chairs, deputy chairs, chiefs and deputy chiefs has not met for some time, the work across the officer group around collaboration is very much live and well, and builds on the proud and long history that the 3 Welsh Fire and Rescue Services have had on collaboration. And just want to reassure members that that will continue. We're in conversations as senior leaders with the elected leadership on the National Issues Committee and what does that look like going forward as well. So the paper, just to reassure members across the spectrum of activities across the 3 Welsh Fire and Rescue Services, that collaboration is very much at the heart of what we do. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Hugh. Just to, for those members, this was set up in 2012, which is the first time that actually it was a national coordinating committee, a national issues committee. But as far as I'm concerned, it was very good. For one reason, we met our counterparts, chairs and vice chairs of the 2 other authorities, which I think was very rare. And also the point that at that meetings, I think we built up a relationship and understanding. I think we had about 49 targets, if I remember, something like that, to achieve, and we went through them to make sure that they were achievable. Quite a number were dropped, but when you look at it, it has been worthwhile. And as far as I'm concerned, our officers done a fantastic job on it. Anyone got any questions on it?
I just like to second what you said. It was a really interesting meeting. So I loved the ride up to Mid Wales, but yes, very good. We've collaborated on lots of things. Excellent, excellent.
I think we sorted a lot of things driving up to Llandudno Wells, I think. Anyway, someone moves that we note.
I move, Chair. Yes.
Is that seconded?
Second.
No one against it. Thank you for that. Then we go to 7.6, which is the members' attendances for 2020-21. Sally?
Yeah, this report's more for information purposes. It details member attendance for this municipal year, particularly on the percentage charts. Just be very mindful that we are dealing with an extremely low number of meetings per year for each of the various committees. So one non-attendance can perhaps swing the percentage quite heavily. But certainly, given the fact that we've had to make the move over to virtual meetings, we know there's been some teething issues with the technology. The member attendance has been at a really good level, and I know that the virtual meetings have enabled some members to attend meetings where perhaps they wouldn't otherwise have been able to. And certainly it's hoped that with the new provisions being brought in May under the new Local Government and Elections Act, that member attendance should continue. But happy to take any questions.
Well, I think the point is every member has seen the attendance and they note their own attendance, so I don't think we'll go much into that. So we just all agree, we just note the attendance.
Yeah.
All right, all agree?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Agree.
Then we go to 7.7, which is the forward work programme on page 277. Sally?
Yeah, this is for members' information. As you'll be aware from Alison's commentary earlier, it may be that we need to hold an extraordinary fire authority meeting to consider the job evaluation prior to the AGM, as we weren't able to bring that to members today. But obviously we'll be in touch with members in due course about holding a single item meeting in either April or May.
Well, right, the members know that, and we'll get that done as soon as possible. Anyway, anyone got any questions, any comments on the forward workload? Thank you for that. Can I just record my thanks to all the members for their partaking in the fire authority. Greatly appreciated by myself as the chairman for the support and the time that you've given, and also extend that to all our staff who've done a fantastic job under very difficult circumstances in the last 12 months, and they are a credit not only to us but to the communities we represent. So I have that recorded, please.
And I agree with everything you said, Chair. The professionalism of the staff and everybody, and the work they put into to make this, a difficult year.
Yeah, I second that definitely, 100% so, Chair.
Right, thank you all. Anyway, it's been a 2.5 hour meeting, so I think either your stomachs are rumbling a bit now or whatever it is. Can we again, Hugh, send our regards and wish you a quick recovery for your sake as well, because obviously you're doing all the housework and everything else.
He's doing the cooking, and he got
she is home. Who is she? Hugh, she is home.
Yes, Tudor. Joanne came home late on Friday, and
right.
I have been elevated from Chief Fire Officer to Chief Cook and Bottle Washer, which I'm striving to achieve. And I'll make sure that that your thanks to all staff is recorded with our routine notice as well.
Yes. Be patient with her, right?
As always.
Well, she looked after you long enough anyway, so... Anyway, thank everyone, and we look forward to having a special meeting, hopefully as soon as possible. Keep well and keep safe. That's the main thing now. All the best to you all.
All the best to everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.